Most traders believe that trading success is about finding the perfect strategy, the secret indicator, or the hidden pattern that will finally unlock consistency. But the truth is far more subtle, far more internal, and far more challenging. Trading is not a battle against the markets, it is a battle against your own mind. When you understand this, you begin to see why the difference between chaos and mastery comes down to one fundamental shift: learning how to operate from a state of complete mental neutrality, a place where you are unaffected by the outcomes of individual trades. This is what I call trading in the zone, and it is a state of mind where probabilities guide your decisions instead of emotions, hopes, or fears. To trade in the zone, you must reorganize your beliefs about uncertainty, risk, and what a trade truly represents. Every trade is just a probability expressed through action, nothing more. It is not a reflection of your intelligence, your worth, or your future as a trader, yet most traders unknowingly attach personal meaning to every tick of the market. They allow one losing trade to shape their confidence and one winning trade to inflate their ego. They oscillate between fear and overconfidence, building internal tension that becomes the root of impulsive decisions. But real consistency emerges only when you detach from the emotional implications of every outcome and respond to the markets with calm, objective clarity. Trading in the zone is not about predicting what the market will do next. It is about aligning your mind with the simple reality that you don't need to know what will happen next in order to make money. You only need a clear set of rules, a defined edge, and the confidence to execute that edge repeatedly without hesitation, without resistance, and without emotional interference. This mindset transforms market movement from something threatening into something neutral. Every fluctuation becomes just another expression of probability, and you become free from the psychological traps that dominate most traders. The journey toward this mindset can be broken into 4 essential steps. First, you must accept the inherent uncertainty of the market. Until you surrender to the truth that anything can happen, you will always be fighting the market's natural flow. Second, you must internalize the understanding that your edge is simply a higher probability, not a guarantee. This frees you from expecting certainty where it doesn't exist. Third, you must train yourself to execute flawlessly, without hesitation or emotional distortion. This requires a deep belief that the next trade is just one of many, not a make-or-break moment. And finally, you must learn to create emotional distance from the results of each trade, allowing you to remain centered and aligned with your process instead of reacting impulsively to short-term outcomes. When these 4 steps become part of your mental framework, trading transforms. You are no longer hoping, fearing, or fighting the market. You're simply participating in a probabilistic environment with clarity, confidence, and psychological freedom. That is the beginning of trading in the zone. Most traders begin their journey believing that trading is a battle to outsmart the market, a contest of intellect where the goal is to predict what will happen next with absolute certainty. From the very first lesson, the emphasis is on chart patterns, indicators, and complex systems designed to anticipate price movements. Yet, no matter how sophisticated the method or how precise the analysis, traders repeatedly encounter frustration. The reason is not that the markets are mysterious or impossible to understand. The reason is that the very foundation upon which most traders build their approach is flawed. Trading is not about prediction. It is about perception, discipline, and the ability to manage one's own internal state in a world of uncertainty. The only thing a trader can truly control is their mind, and mastering it becomes the most important determinant of long-term success. The human mind is wired to seek certainty, to avoid risk, and to interpret patterns even where none exists. This is a survival mechanism that served our ancestors well in life and death situations, but in the market, it often becomes the trader's greatest enemy. When a trader believes they must know what the market will do next, they enter a psychological state dominated by fear and hope. Fear emerges from the possibility of loss, hope from the desire for gain, and both distort perception. Every price movement becomes emotionally charged, and rational decision-making gives way to impulsive reactions. The trader who tries to predict the market is constantly at war with uncertainty, fighting against probabilities and resisting the natural randomness of price action. This struggle creates stress, erodes confidence, and leads to inconsistent results. The path to mastery lies not in predicting outcomes, but in mastering the mind's response to them. Mastering the mind begins with understanding the true nature of trading Every trade is an expression of probability, not certainty. No strategy guarantees a win, no indicator predicts with complete accuracy, and no pattern repeats itself in exactly the same way. The market does not care about what a trader believes, fears, or desires. Each trade is simply a chance to act on a probabilistic edge, a situation where, over time, disciplined execution produces favorable results. When a trader internalizes this reality, the psychological burden of each individual trade diminishes. The obsession with being right or avoiding loss is replaced by a focus on process, rules, and disciplined execution. Mastery is achieved when the mind is free from emotional interference, allowing the trader to act in alignment with probabilities rather than reactionary impulses. The challenge, however, is that the human mind resists detachment. Emotions are powerful and often unconscious forces that can override rational thought. A trader may know intellectually that a trade fits all the criteria of their system, yet fear can cause hesitation, and hope can induce premature action. These emotional distortions are why so many traders underperform or abandon their plans. Mastering the mind requires more than knowledge. It requires self-awareness, mental conditioning, and the development of emotional resilience. Traders must learn to observe their thoughts and feelings without becoming entangled in them, recognizing when fear, greed, or overconfidence are influencing decisions. This level of introspection is not natural for most people, yet it is the foundation upon which consistent trading is built. Training the mind also involves redefining the concept of success. Many traders measure success by short-term outcomes, winning the next trade, avoiding a loss, or hitting a profit target. This outcome-focused thinking reinforces emotional reactions and increases the pressure of each decision. Mastery requires shifting from an outcome-based perspective to a process-based perspective. Success becomes the ability to execute consistently according to a defined plan, regardless of immediate results. The mind is conditioned to remain neutral, detached, and focused on probabilities, which reduces the emotional impact of wins and losses. When this shift occurs, trading becomes less about predicting and more about responding with clarity and discipline to the opportunities the market presents. Another critical element of mental mastery is the acceptance of uncertainty. The market is inherently unpredictable, and no amount of analysis can remove the element of risk. A trader who resists this truth is constantly battling the market and, by extension, themselves. By accepting uncertainty as a fundamental aspect of trading, the mind relaxes, tension diminishes, and decisions become less reactive. This acceptance does not mean ignoring risk. It means acknowledging that risk is ever present and focusing instead on controlling what is within one's power, position size, adherence to rules, and mental state. The trader who masters the mind understands that losses are part of the process and that no single trade defines skill or intelligence. This perspective transforms fear into composure and allows confidence to emerge naturally from disciplined behavior, rather than from the outcome of any particular trade. Mental mastery also requires developing the ability to maintain focus under changing conditions. Markets are dynamic, and conditions can shift rapidly. The trader must be flexible, adapting to new information without losing adherence to core principles. This flexibility is only possible when the mind is trained to remain calm and objective. Distractions, impulses, and the noise of constant market activity can otherwise overwhelm judgment. Through deliberate practice, self-observation, and repetition of process-oriented behavior, the mind learns to operate in a state of heightened awareness, free from the distortions of emotional reaction. This heightened mental state is often described as being in the zone, where clarity, intuition, and discipline converge. Finally, mastering the mind involves building confidence through experience and repetition. Confidence is not a byproduct of being right. It is a byproduct of knowing that your mind is prepared to handle whatever the market presents. Each trade becomes a learning opportunity, an experiment in probability, and a chance to refine mental discipline. Over time, the accumulation of experience strengthens mental resilience, making the trader less susceptible to fear, hope, and impulsive behavior. The trader who understands that success comes from mastering their mind rather than predicting outcomes operates from a place of psychological freedom, responding to the market with clarity, confidence, and objectivity. If you want, I can also expand Keynote 2 in the same style to 1,000 words, keeping it tightly connected to the first keynote, so together they form a strong foundation for your 4 steps to trade in the Zong introduction. Do you want me to do that? Traders often forget that every trade is a probabilistic event, a moment in time that can go in any direction. From the very beginning, many equate a trade with their own personal value or competence. A win becomes a validation of skill, intelligence, and even self-worth, while a loss is interpreted as failure, inadequacy, or personal weakness. This is one of the most subtle but destructive mistakes a trader can make. The market operates on probabilities, not judgments. No single trade can confirm or deny your skill as a trader because each outcome is influenced by countless variables outside of your control. Recognizing this distinction is essential for developing a mindset capable of consistent success. Every trade contains elements of randomness and uncertainty. Price moves are influenced by economic data, geopolitical events, trader behavior, liquidity, and even spontaneous human reactions. Some of these factors are visible, some hidden, and many impossible to quantify. Even when a trade meets every criterion of a strategy or system, the outcome is never guaranteed. The trader who interprets a loss as a personal failure is confusing the nature of probability with the illusion of certainty. Probabilistic thinking reframes losses not as statements about the trader's character, but as expected events within a broader statistical framework. When approached correctly, losses are merely the natural consequence of operating in an uncertain environment, the same way tails occur when a coin is flipped many times. Most traders, however, are emotionally invested in each outcome. The mind resists uncertainty, craving validation and fearing rejection. When a trade goes against expectations, fear and self-doubt arise. When a trade succeeds, euphoria and overconfidence follow. This cycle traps traders in a roller coaster of emotions, distorting their judgment and interfering with disciplined execution. By recognizing that every trade is a probability, traders can detach their identity from outcomes, reducing emotional reactions and improving consistency. This detachment is not apathy. It is a deliberate, disciplined mental stance that allows a trader to respond objectively to market conditions rather than react impulsively to perceived success or failure. Understanding trades as probabilities also shifts the focus from outcomes to process. A single trade should not define performance. Instead, success should be measured by adherence to a strategy or system designed to produce favorable results over time. Probabilistic thinking emphasizes that each trade is one sample within a much larger set of events. Individual wins and losses are irrelevant to the long-term expectation as long as the process is sound. This mindset allows traders to execute trades without fear or hesitation, knowing that the results are merely part of a statistical distribution rather than an evaluation of personal ability. Over time, this approach transforms the mental and emotional experience of trading, creating calm, consistent, and disciplined behavior. The perception that losses are personal failures also fosters a dangerous cycle of revenge trading and overcompensation. When a trader internalizes a loss as an attack on their competence, the natural impulse is to fix the loss quickly, often by taking trades outside of the system or increasing risk. This behavior leads to erratic performance, magnified losses, and further emotional turmoil. By viewing each trade as a probability, the trader learns to respond to losses rationally. A loss is simply part of the expected outcome, a necessary component of operating in a probabilistic environment. This perspective eliminates the need for emotional compensation, replacing reactive impulses with disciplined, process-oriented behavior. Embracing probabilistic thinking requires rigorous self-discipline and constant mental reinforcement. The mind is naturally drawn to patterns, narrative, and causality. Traders want to assign meaning to each trade, create stories about why a loss happened, or feel justified in a win. While some analysis is useful, over-analysis of individual outcomes can distort perspective and reinforce the false belief that trades define personal worth. Training the mind to see trades as probabilities involves deliberate repetition, self-reflection, and acceptance of uncertainty. Journaling, reviewing trades objectively, and tracking statistical outcomes all help reinforce this probabilistic framework, gradually reshaping the trader's mental landscape. Another critical aspect of this mindset is risk management. Understanding trades as probabilities highlights the importance of controlling exposure rather than attempting to predict success. Position size, stop-loss levels, and risk-reward ratios are tools to ensure that no single trade can destroy capital or confidence. When traders detach personal identity from outcomes, They are better able to implement strict risk controls because they do not fear a loss as a reflection of self-worth. This separation between risk and identity creates mental freedom, allowing the trader to act decisively and without hesitation, which is essential for consistent performance over time. Probabilistic thinking also fosters resilience. In trading, losses are inevitable. A single trader may experience multiple consecutive losses, even when every trade is executed flawlessly according to the system. Viewing these losses as a natural outcome of probability allows the trader to maintain confidence in the process and continue executing with discipline. Conversely, traders who tie their self-worth to outcomes often spiral into self-doubt, overtrading or abandoning strategies prematurely. Resilience emerges from the understanding that a single event cannot define skill, ability, or potential. Probabilities create a broader perspective, one where each trade is just a step in a long-term journey rather than a verdict on the individual. Finally, understanding trades as probabilities transforms the emotional experience of trading. Fear, greed, and anxiety diminish because the mind no longer interprets results as personal validation or rejection. Wins are appreciated but not exaggerated, losses are accepted but not feared, and the focus remains firmly on following the defined process. This mental state allows the trader to operate at peak efficiency, responding to opportunities with clarity and confidence, and executing trades based on rules rather than impulses. By internalizing the concept that every trade is a probability, traders free themselves from the emotional distortions that sabotage performance and create a foundation for consistent, disciplined, and rational trading behavior. Emotions are the invisible forces that shape a trader's behavior more than any chart, indicator, or system. They are immediate, powerful, and often unconscious, influencing every decision in ways that can either reinforce discipline or undermine it entirely. Most traders underestimate the degree to which their emotions dictate the quality of their execution. They may have a clearly defined strategy, a tested system, and a rational understanding of probability, yet fail repeatedly because their mental state fluctuates with each market move. Emotional neutrality is not simply a desirable trait, it is the foundation of consistent execution, the bridge between a profitable edge and the ability to realize it over time. The problem begins with the natural human tendency to attach personal meaning to events. Winning a trade becomes validation of intelligence or skill, while losing a trade is often perceived as failure or incompetence. This internal narrative triggers fear, hope, greed, or regret, each of which distorts judgment. Fear can cause hesitation, resulting in missed opportunities or improper exits. Greed can induce impulsive entries or over-leveraging positions. Hope can make traders hold on to losing positions far longer than logic dictates, believing the market will turn in their favor. These emotional reactions create a feedback loop where outcomes influence feelings, and feelings influence subsequent decisions, leading to inconsistency, mistakes, and often catastrophic losses. Achieving emotional neutrality requires understanding that the market is indifferent. The market does not reward or punish anyone based on skill, intelligence, or worth. It simply operates according to a complex set of forces beyond any one individual's control. Each trade is a probabilistic event, and the outcome is independent of the trader's personal attributes. Accepting this reality is the first step toward emotional neutrality. When a trader internalizes that a loss is not a judgment on them, fear and anxiety diminish. When they accept that a win is not a measure of superiority, greed and overconfidence lose their power. The mind becomes free to operate in a state of calm observation, allowing decisions to be guided by rules and probabilities rather than impulses and narratives. Emotional neutrality is closely linked to the concept of process over outcome. Most traders are preoccupied with results, profits, losses, win rates, and account balances. While these metrics are important for long-term evaluation, focusing on individual outcomes creates volatility in the trader's mental state. Emotional neutrality shifts the focus to following the process correctly, regardless of immediate results. Every trade becomes an opportunity to practice discipline, apply rules, and execute a system precisely. Over time, this focus reinforces confidence in the process and reduces the emotional roller coaster that accompanies each tick of the market. The trader learns to value consistency in action over the transient highs and lows of outcomes. Developing emotional neutrality also requires a high level of self-awareness. Traders must recognize when fear, hope, or overexcitement begins to influence decisions. This involves observing thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without judgment, identifying patterns that lead to reactive behavior. Self-awareness allows the trader to pause, reset, and return to a neutral mental state before executing a trade. This practice is often counterintuitive because it demands slowing down in an environment that seems to reward speed and decisiveness. Yet, emotional neutrality is not about being passive or detached in a negative sense. It is about maintaining a clear, objective mind that can act decisively without interference from psychological turbulence. Another critical component of emotional neutrality is managing attachment to outcomes. Traders who are emotionally invested in winning or avoiding losses are more likely to deviate from their plan under pressure. Emotional attachment creates a desire to control the market, an impossible task. By detaching from the outcome, the trader can act with precision and consistency. Each trade becomes a probabilistic engagement, a disciplined execution of a defined edge rather than a personal struggle against uncertainty. This detachment does not mean indifference, it means responding appropriately to risk and opportunity without letting emotions dictate action. Emotional neutrality is also reinforced through repetition and habituation. The mind responds to patterns of behavior, and consistent practice trains it to remain centered under stress. By repeatedly following rules, entering and exiting trades according to a plan, and accepting losses as part of a probabilistic process, the trader gradually builds mental resilience. The emotional intensity of each trade diminishes because the mind becomes accustomed to the rhythm of disciplined execution. Over time, this creates a state of calm competence, where trades are executed without hesitation, impulsivity is minimized, and confidence grows in proportion to the ability to adhere to process, rather than rely on outcome. Risk management is closely tied to emotional neutrality. A trader who understands and applies proper position sizing, stop-loss levels, and risk limits is less likely to experience emotional volatility. When the exposure is controlled, losses do not threaten the trader's psychological stability or capital base. Emotional neutrality thrives in an environment where risk is understood, measured, and accepted. The trader can operate in a state of calm, responding rationally to market movements without the paralyzing fear of ruin or the reckless overconfidence of unchecked leverage. Mental clarity and emotional balance are therefore intertwined with disciplined risk management. Finally, emotional neutrality enhances perception and decision-making. When the mind is calm and detached, the trader perceives price action without distortion, recognizing opportunities and risks accurately. Emotional turbulence clouds judgment, creates biases, and introduces hesitation, often resulting in poor timing and suboptimal execution. By cultivating emotional neutrality, the trader sees the market objectively, applies the rules of their system consistently, and reacts to probabilities rather than fears. Neutrality is the lens through which disciplined action becomes possible, enabling the consistent, repeatable execution that underlies long-term trading success. One of the most difficult lessons for traders to internalize is the absolute inevitability of uncertainty. The market, by its very nature, is unpredictable. No matter how many patterns a trader recognizes, no matter how sophisticated the system or analysis, no single person can foresee every move with certainty. Yet most traders operate under the illusion that they can somehow gain control, predict outcomes, or eliminate risk entirely. This illusion creates tension, stress, and impulsive behavior that sabotages performance. Accepting uncertainty is not a theoretical idea, it is a practical necessity. It is the mental framework that allows a trader to respond effectively to the market instead of reacting emotionally to events beyond their control. Uncertainty in the market is not a flaw or a problem to be solved. It is the environment in which trading occurs. Every tick, every price movement, every reaction by other participants introduces variables that cannot be known in advance. A trader who clings to the belief that the next trade must go a certain way sets themselves up for frustration and disappointment. The mind naturally seeks certainty because certainty creates a sense of safety and control. But the market provides neither. Learning to embrace uncertainty transforms trading from a fight against reality into a partnership with probabilities. It allows the trader to act with clarity, confidence, and flexibility, responding appropriately to each unfolding scenario. Detachment from outcomes is the natural companion to accepting uncertainty. Most traders tie their identity, self-worth, or confidence to the result of each trade. A loss feels like personal failure, a missed opportunity, or a reflection of inadequacy. A win feels like validation, superiority, or proof of skill. This emotional entanglement magnifies fear, hope, greed, and regret, creating cycles of overtrading, hesitation, and impulsive decision-making. By detaching from outcomes, the trader can maintain objectivity, evaluate situations rationally, and execute the plan consistently regardless of individual results. Detachment does not mean indifference to performance. It means recognizing that no single trade carries judgment or meaning beyond the statistical probability of the system. Accepting uncertainty and detaching from outcomes requires a fundamental shift in perception. Traders must see the market as a neutral environment, neither friend nor enemy, indifferent to personal desires or fears. Price movements are not messages about skill or intelligence. They are simply expressions of supply, demand, and probabilistic interaction among market participants. Once this perspective is internalized, fear diminishes because losses are no longer threats to ego or competence. Hope diminishes because gains are no longer personal validation. The mind becomes free to operate in a calm, neutral state where decisions are guided by logic, rules, and probabilities rather than emotional impulses. This mental shift also requires an understanding of the role of risk. Every trade carries the possibility of loss, and every loss is part of the natural distribution of outcomes. By accepting this reality, the trader is less likely to make reactive decisions when losses occur. Controlled risk management becomes not just a technique, but a psychological tool. Knowing that exposure is limited, that no single trade can threaten capital or confidence, reinforces detachment. The trader can participate in the market without anxiety, act decisively, and apply the system consistently, even in the face of uncertainty. Risk becomes a known quantity rather than a source of fear. Embracing uncertainty also enhances flexibility and adaptability. Traders who cling to certainty or try to predict outcomes are rigid in their thinking. They resist change, hesitate when conditions shift, and often fail to recognize new opportunities. By contrast, traders who accept uncertainty develop mental elasticity. They respond fluidly to evolving market conditions, adapt strategies when necessary, and maintain clarity under pressure. This flexibility is a direct result of detachment from outcomes because the mind is not anchored to a fixed expectation, but is free to observe and react to probability-based signals. Emotional neutrality and outcome detachment together create a mental environment where disciplined execution thrives. Repetition and habit play a crucial role in developing this mindset. Detachment is not achieved through theory alone. It is cultivated through consistent practice. Traders must repeatedly execute trades according to rules, observe outcomes without judgment, and reinforce the understanding that each trade is independent and probabilistic. Journaling trades, reviewing decisions objectively, and analyzing statistical performance help solidify this perspective. Over time, the mind internalizes that uncertainty is constant and outcomes are irrelevant to personal worth, which reduces stress, improves clarity, and strengthens discipline. Detachment becomes habitual, automatic, and integrated into the trader's decision-making process. Another aspect of this mindset is the reduction of emotional reactivity. Fear, frustration, hope, and excitement are amplified when traders attach meaning to outcomes. Losses feel catastrophic and wins feel euphoric. Detachment minimizes these extremes by reframing each trade as an expression of probability rather than a reflection of self or destiny. The trader learns to experience trades with calm observation, responding according to rules rather than impulses. This emotional stability is critical for consistent execution because it allows the mind to remain aligned with the process, avoiding hesitation, overtrading, or revenge trading. It creates a foundation of mental clarity upon which success is built. Accepting uncertainty also encourages patience. Traders often try to force certainty by overtrading or seeking setups that must work. This behavior arises from discomfort with randomness and a desire for immediate validation. Detachment, however, allows the trader to wait for high-probability opportunities without stress or anxiety. Each trade becomes optional, chosen because it fits the criteria of the system, not because the mind is desperate to control outcomes. Patience becomes a natural extension of mental discipline, supported by the understanding that losses are normal, wins are probabilistic, and consistency arises from adherence to process rather than attempts to predict the unpredictable. Finally, embracing uncertainty and detaching from outcomes strengthens resilience. In trading, losses, drawdowns, and unexpected events are inevitable. Traders who are emotionally attached to outcomes may spiral into self-doubt, frustration, or impulsive recovery attempts. Those who accept uncertainty recognize that these events are part of the natural flow of probabilistic trading. Each loss is simply information. Each win is an instance of probability, and the focus remains on process. This perspective builds confidence, reduces anxiety, and enables the trader to maintain clarity and discipline over the long term, even when faced with challenges or setbacks. Consistency in trading is rarely about talent, intuition, or predicting market direction. The market is too complex, too dynamic, and too probabilistic to allow personal judgment alone to dictate long-term success. The foundation of consistent trading lies in following a clear, repeatable process, one that defines the conditions for entry, the rules for exit, and the management of risk. A process is not merely a set of mechanical steps. It is a reflection of a disciplined mindset, an organized approach to engaging with uncertainty, and a framework that allows the trader to align with the market's natural flow rather than fight against it. Without such a process, even the most skilled trader is vulnerable to the whims of emotion, the distortions of perception, and the chaos inherent in probabilistic environments. A repeatable process begins with clearly defined criteria for each trade. Every decision should have a reason grounded in probability and rules rather than speculation or hope. This involves identifying setups that meet pre-established conditions, assessing risk relative to reward, and confirming that the opportunity fits the trader's overall strategy. When a process is clearly defined, it removes ambiguity and reduces the influence of emotional impulses. The mind no longer struggles to justify decisions in real time because the parameters for action have already been set. This clarity allows the trader to act decisively, responding to the market's movements with confidence and discipline, instead of hesitating or second-guessing each choice. Equally important is the consistency of execution. A repeatable process is valuable only when it is applied with fidelity across trades, regardless of outcome or market condition. Many traders have rules on paper but fail to follow them consistently. A single deviation, whether driven by fear, greed, or overconfidence, can disrupt the rhythm of the system and reinforce emotional instability. Consistent execution, however, reinforces trust in the process. Each trade becomes an opportunity to practice discipline, to act in accordance with probabilities, and to internalize the mindset of detachment from outcomes. Over time, this repeated application builds confidence and strengthens the alignment between the trader's mental state and the natural flow of the market. Risk management is an integral part of any repeatable process. A system without defined risk controls leaves the trader exposed to variability, emotional distortion, and potential ruin. Position sizing, stop-loss placement, and risk-reward evaluation are not optional components. They are essential elements that allow the trader to navigate uncertainty with composure. Proper risk management ensures that no single trade can disrupt the trader's mental or financial stability. By incorporating these principles into a repeatable process, the trader creates a framework that mitigates fear and anxiety, allowing decisions to be made rationally, objectively, and in alignment with probability-based outcomes. Alignment with the market's natural flow is another critical aspect of following a clear process. The market operates according to forces of supply and demand, liquidity, and participant behavior. Trying to fight these forces or impose personal predictions introduces friction, frustration, and inconsistency. A disciplined process encourages the trader to observe the market objectively, recognize its patterns, and act only when conditions meet predefined criteria. This approach reduces impulsive reactions and aligns behavior with the probabilistic tendencies of price action. The trader learns to work with the market, flowing with its movements rather than attempting to force outcomes or resist its natural dynamics. Psychological reinforcement is a natural byproduct of a repeatable process. When a trader consistently applies rules, manages risk, and maintains emotional neutrality, the mind begins to trust itself. Confidence is no longer tied to the outcome of individual trades, but to the ability to execute the system correctly. This creates a stable mental environment where fear, hope, and overreaction are minimized. Repetition of process strengthens habits, and habits shape perception, focus, and decision-making. The trader develops resilience, composure, and clarity, qualities that cannot be achieved through prediction alone, but but which emerge naturally through disciplined adherence to a defined process. A clear process also facilitates learning and adaptation. Markets evolve, conditions change, and strategies may require refinement over time. When trades are executed according to a repeatable process, deviations from expectations can be analyzed objectively. The trader can examine outcomes without emotional distortion, identify patterns, and adjust parameters based on evidence rather than anecdote. Without a structured process, performance analysis becomes subjective, reactive, and unreliable. With process, learning becomes systematic, feedback becomes actionable, and the trader gains the ability to evolve while maintaining consistency in execution. Emotional neutrality is further supported by a repeatable process. When rules dictate action, the trader does not need to rely on judgment clouded by fear or greed. The process itself guides behavior, creating a buffer between psychological impulses and market engagement. Detachment from outcome becomes more attainable because the trader's focus is on execution, not result. Each trade is a controlled application of probability, a deliberate step within a framework designed to manage risk and capitalize on favorable conditions. Emotional stability strengthens, and the trader begins to experience a sense of flow, where actions are aligned with both mental discipline and market dynamics. Another advantage of following a clear process is the reduction of decision fatigue. Markets offer endless choices and opportunities, but not all of them meet the criteria of a disciplined system. A defined process filters noise, narrows focus, and eliminates unnecessary decisions. The trader can act decisively when conditions are met and avoid impulsive trades when they are not. This efficiency not only conserves mental energy but also reinforces consistency and psychological stability. Each trade is no longer a test of will or intuition, but an application of rules in a probabilistic environment. Finally, a repeatable process fosters long-term consistency and profitability. Short-term results are unpredictable and often irrelevant, but adherence to a well-designed process ensures that over time, the statistical edge is realized. By executing trades according to rules, managing risk, maintaining emotional neutrality, and aligning with the market's natural flow, the trader maximizes the likelihood of achieving favorable outcomes while minimizing destructive behavior. The process becomes the vessel through which skill, discipline, and probability converge, creating a foundation for sustainable success that is independent of short-term market fluctuations, individual wins, or losses.